All right, we got a special surprise for you for the next training here. We have Mark Schonell. What's your
Schnoll.
pronounce your last name for me? Scholl. And we
Schnoll.
have Brian Bucknell, who are from SONANCE. We are doing a live tour of the SONANCE studio, and Mark will be here, kind of walking you guys through the studio, kind of the experience center, go over some really cool new products that SONANCE released at CEDIA. I got some great announcements for you, like 21st Century being able to offer you more options for invisible speakers, more landscape speakers as well. So our offering to you has grown just over the past month. So we'll share more information on that with you. We're going to launch our poll. If you could answer those questions, that would be super helpful. If you have any actual questions yourself, go ahead and put them in the Q&A. One of you guys out there is going to receive a pair of Mariner outdoor speakers. So go ahead and put that in there. We'll pick a special winner for that. So without further ado, Mark, thank you so much for walking us through the SONANCE Experience Center.
Oh, it's our pleasure, Mark. We're really happy to have the group join us this morning or this afternoon, wherever you're watching this from. My name is Mark Schnoll. I've been with the SONANCE team about 7 years now. My primary role with the company is I get to host people here in the SONANCE studio. Towards the end of this, I'm actually going to pick this up and I'm going to walk you guys around the studio a little bit. We're starting in what we call the music room here in the studio, which is where we break down a little bit of the why, the how, and the what of what we do as a company. So we always start these things by saying, hey, if you're going to spend 5 minutes with us, the most important thing to understand is who we are and why we do what we do. I will also say this is your meeting, not ours. So please, if you have some questions, put those into the chat room. My good buddy Brian Bucknell is going to be monitoring the chat room there, and he's going to be able to answer a lot of those questions for us. So we're going to cover this from sales point of view, and we're going to cover this from a product point of view. Our agenda is we're going to go through our new visual experience speakers. We're going to talk about invisible speakers. We're going to talk about outdoor solutions, and we're going to talk about amplifiers today. So we're going to try to jam a lot into the short time that we have together. So hopefully everybody gets as much out of this as possible. But no, this is just the beginning. If there's any questions that anybody has that don't get raised here in this session, myself, Brian Bucknell, or really any member of the SONANCE team is happy to help you guys going forward. So anyway, let's jump right into it. Normally, I start these up on the pillars. Up on the mezzanine where we talk about the pillars. We just had a company-wide meeting, so they're going to clean the space up for me, and that's where eventually I'm going to take you at the end of this. But so let's start with the pillars. The first one we talk about is this thing called reimagining sound. I'm not going to bore everybody with the 20-minute history of SONANCE, but reimagining sound started with the two owners, Scott and Jeff. And Scott would tell you the last thing the world needed was another speaker company. What the world really needed was a design solution for music for the home. And so that's how our company started 41 years ago. Where it's evolved today is we believe that people's homes are their sanctuaries. And if your home is your sanctuary, it's where you want to feel the most comfortable in the world. And so what we talk about here at SONANCE, we talk about how do we achieve comfort? And the four things we look at to achieve comfort are design, temperature, lighting, and sound. And when you get those four things together and you get them right, you change the way somebody's home feels. And so when we host people here in the studio, we really focus on those four things. What we don't spend a lot of time doing is talking about the bits and the parts and the pieces. And quite frankly, these are the things most people don't care about at the end of the day. What we really want to do is we want to paint a picture for how somebody's home is going to look, and then how somebody's home is going to function, and is it comfortable when they're in that space. And so a lot of the terminology we use here is going to be really easy to understand and digestible from that homeowner's point of view, because it's our belief that every one of those clients can spend more. The reason they don't is they just don't see value in what we do. And I probably insulted half the people on this webinar right now. But it's the truth if we're being honest with each other. And we know it's true because if you've ever presented to somebody and you put a $400 pair of speakers in one room and a $1,000 pair of speakers in another room, they end up asking that question, hey, Mark, what's the difference between the two? And we've taught you to answer that question by saying, oh, let me teach you the difference between a soft dome tweeter, a powdered coat aluminum, and a ceramic tweeter. And my guess is the eyes roll over and everybody says, hey, I'm not an audiophile. Just put the cheap one in there and I'll be just fine. And everybody loses in that scenario. So part of what today is going to be about is how do we have that conversation with somebody that introduces technology, but doesn't do it in a way that either turns them off or offends them so they understand what we do. And we have figured out two things. The more we talk about experience and design, the more people understand what we do as a company. And so we ask this question of almost every guest in the studio of, hey, how do you want your sound to look? And this is where most people give me that sideways head turn. And I say, don't worry, in 5 minutes, this is going to make perfect sense to you. And then the other thing that motivates us is if you're going to listen to music at home, there's a couple ways to do it. A lot of us grew up with great stereo systems or cut our teeth in this industry in something that we call two-channel stereo. That means I've got a left speaker, a right speaker, and you sit down right in the middle of those two speakers. You close your eyes and you imagine the band's in the room with you. And I think we can all agree that's a really fun experience. But that experience is about listening to music. That's what you're there to do. I want you to think about yourselves, your family, your friends, and your clients. Think about how they listen to music. And my guess is most of the time music is playing, they're simply doing something else. They're cooking, they're cleaning, family, friends, entertaining, whatever it happens to be. Most of the time, the experience is not about listening to music. Our belief is pretty simple. People don't buy our products to listen to music. People buy our things because life is better with music. Any experience that you have in your home can be improved or can be enhanced when music is playing comfortably from a hidden source. And that's the message we want to get across to people, because everybody has this bad experience of it's too loud, turn it down, or it's uncomfortable. And that's why people get away from listening to music. So what we want to do is we want to introduce a way that actually gives people their music back without volume wars, without having to yell over the top of it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to show you a number of different things that we can do to actually improve that. Now, there's also a tool that everybody has access to called the SONANCE Design Gallery. We created this tool to help you have this conversation out in the field. So whether it's going to be your clients or the homeowner, whoever it happens to be. And what we really want to teach is even balance coverage, and we want to teach about design to disappear. And when we can teach those two things, what we're seeing is the average selling price of every pair of speakers rise in the job, because we know that client can spend more. How many of us have ever walked onto a project and all of a sudden this beautiful piece of marble comes in and you point to it and you say, what is that? And they're going to say, that's a $25,000 slab of marble that was imported from Italy for backsplash. And you think to yourself, why am I getting beat up over $400 speakers when they're spending $25,000 on this? It's because they understand it and they see value in it. And that's really what we want to teach here. All right, so let's dive into it now. Let's talk really quickly about even balance coverage. What we do at Sonance is we make this analogy towards lighting, because lighting is very objective and everybody understands it. And so if you think about modern lighting today, nobody lights an entire space with just two lights like they used to. Why? To get light everywhere, what you're forced to do is turn them very hot and bright to get the light fully throughout the space. And when you do that, if you happen to be caught under that existing light, what you're going to find is it's really uncomfortable, right? It almost feels like you're being interrogated. And so we understand the concept of putting enough light fixtures in the ceiling that we can bring the level down so it makes it comfortable throughout the entire space. We think sound works the same exact way. If a homeowner and their guest are close to a speaker everywhere they go, and that speaker is from a hidden source, what we're able to do is bring that volume down so it's comfortable and you can have a conversation over the top of it. And we're finding when we deliver that message that way, I get a lot of this. Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. Why isn't anybody talking about this already? And so let's talk a little bit about design to disappear and how we're going to create these systems. So we'd like to introduce everybody now to something we call visual experience. And so for years, Sonance had a line of speakers called Visual Performance. Still represents a third of our overall business. But we also realized that visual performance did not represent any of our current strategy. So we started down a path to say, okay, if we're going to redesign this, what can we improve to actually make this more in line with what we're talking about today? And we have three things. The first thing we talk about is how does it look? So the aesthetics got improved. The second thing we talk about is the performance of the speaker and how it actually delivers sound evenly throughout a space. And then this last one is more for the installation guys out there, is how does it actually install? So we've made that much easier as well. So hopefully I don't make everybody dizzy. I'm going to start pulling my cart around into the studio here so you can actually take a look at some of these things. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, hey, how do you want your sound to look? And so with visual experience, what we have is lots of different ways that this product is offered. So when you open the box and you order a visual experience, the first thing you're going to get is a very traditional looking grill. Now that grill is going to have a bezel on the outside of it. I will tell you, we've gone to a much brighter white. I don't know how this is going to show up on camera, but this is actually an old VP grill compared to a new Visual Extreme. And hopefully everybody can see that difference. It's a much brighter white. So we've gone to a standard RAL or RAL code with the white on that. So when you order it, this is what you're going to get. But you have a bunch of different options here. What we're going to do is take our cues from the lights, and we're going to look at the size, the shape, and the trim. And that's really going to tell us the right grill to go along with it. So all of these are going to be available in square as well. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to pull this camera really close so I don't get a glare on this. And I'm going to pull my camera a little bit. Here we go. And so the first thing we're going to look at here is we're going to look at what's available. And so what you can see here is on the left-hand side is that very traditional looking grill. In the middle, we're going to offer that grill with no bezel. And then on the far right-hand side, what you're seeing there is actually a bezel-less or a flush mount grill to it. And so this flush mount grill, sorry, my camera changed. I'm just going to switch back to my camera really quick to the right one here. I'm going to do that by hitting these video settings. Sorry, everybody, just give me 1 second so I can just switch back to the right camera. There we go. Okay, so what we're going to do here.
The camera isn't working right now, Mark.
Oh, it is not. Sorry. Let me just make sure this guy is good and punked in. Is it not punching back up for me? My apologies. I'll go to my standard camera then. My apologies, everybody. Okay, so we're going to go back to the standard camera over here. And so this is through something called TrueFig. And I'm going to tell you guys just a bit of a story here really quick. About 20 years ago, we saw a trend in lighting to go to flush mount light fixtures. And so we didn't have a design solution to actually match that. And so we started to engineer a speaker that could be flush mount. It was called Architectural Series by Sonance. But as we created that, we also thought, oh, this is a really clever mounting platform. There are other things people might want to flush mount. And so we created a brand called TrueFig. Today, TrueFig is used to us more as an adverb, meaning, hey, I really want to TrueFig that or flush mount it. And so when we brought out this new line of Visual Extreme or Visual Experience, excuse me, is the first thing we thought to ourselves is, hey, I really want to TrueFig that. So one of the options that is available with this now is to do TrueFig boards to actually flush mount them. The other things we're actually going to offer over here as well is custom painting. And so this custom services now is if you guys give us that Sherman-Williams, that Benjamin Moore, that RAL code, what we're able to do is actually custom paint the grills. There is an initial setup fee. and for every color, and then a per grill charge after that. Of course, that setup fee gets amortized out the more grills you order with it. So if we don't want to hand the painter and have them lose the grill on the job site, we're happy to paint those grills for you. And this last thing we're now talking about is something called laser printing. Now, if you look at this board over here, what we're doing is we're showing laser printing off as actually matching a wood grain for a tongue and groove ceiling. And so there's no reason this couldn't be a piece of wallpaper or a repeating tile pattern. Whatever we want it to be is what that grain can actually be. An initial setup fee, and then a per charge in order that to get that laser printing onto the grill itself. Sorry, I'm trying to be my own tech here really quick. Hey, I got my good camera working again. So
yeah, that last view, I mean, it was a good close up, so it looked fine.
Yeah, there you go. So
this is more of a wide view, so yes, I can see them all now.
So that being said, is how do you have this conversation with somebody? And so one of the things we're going to talk about is this thing called the Sonance Design Gallery. And so if you go to sonancedesigngallery.com, what you're going to find is you're going to get a page that comes up initially that's going to ask you, is it a residential, a commercial client, or a marine client? In this case, if we're talking about a residential client, what it's going to allow you to do is start to tell that story with somebody. And eventually what you're going to end up with is you're going to end up at what we call the solutions tab. And so I'm going to swing my camera around a little bit over here. This happens to be the Sonance Design Gallery. So I'm going to back it out all the way to the main page over here. So this is residential, professional, and marine. And when I press on this residential side, what we're going to talk about with somebody is say, hey, our belief is that your home's your sanctuary. It should be as comfortable as possible. We want to teach you how technology can actually make your space feel better and more comfortable. So we know we're going to interact with technology for music inside the house, music outside the house, surround sound system. So if somebody wants to sit down with their family and watch a movie, we can show people the options and solutions for that. Or maybe people watch TV like my family does, meaning there's something on in the background that we're not really watching TV. It's more like a sports activity. Maybe it's a game, maybe it's a cooking show, whatever it happens to be. And one of the complaints that we hear a lot from people is, hey, I just can't hear my TV. And so we have all these different solutions on how to improve the sound, but also say, great, how do you want your TV sound to look? And so we can have that same conversation. But if we click on this music for the home, we're going to start with our good friend Brittany here, walking through a space. Brittany's not there to listen to music. She's there to sit down and enjoy a magazine, a moment to herself. We can all agree, what is more comfortable, sitting in a dead quiet room or sitting in a room where music is at a comfortable level from a hidden source? And so what we're going to talk about is, hey, this is how we use music to make it better. And then we're going to teach somebody about this coverage. And so what we have is an illustration that walks through two speakers, makes the analogy towards lighting, or lots of speakers and making that analogy towards lighting again and making the space more comfortable. Where we end up is talking is design to disappear, is how do you want your sound to look? And so what you're able to do here is talk about drywall, plaster, wallpaper, or wood ceilings, and actually just kind of walk somebody through, eventually ending up with an invisible speaker here. Where we're going to end up is something called the Solutions tab, where we have visual experience, invisible, and some other products on there as well. And so if we go to the visual experience, I told you we improved three things. We improved how it looks. We just walked you through that. How it sounds, and then the installation. All of those cues are going to be on that on the design gallery there. So it's going to help you cue that and bring it up in your head. But if we talk now a little bit about performance of the speaker and said, hey, you told us you made the speaker sound better. What did you do? So we're going to give everybody a little bit of a lesson over here and go through the lineup of visual experience. And so we have got those very traditional sizes of a 4-inch, a 6-inch, and an 8-inch speaker. And I'm going to let you behind the curtain a little bit. We're like any other speaker company. We want to make some really, really great sounding things. So what you do with any speaker to make it sound better is you improve three things. You improve what the drivers are made of in a speaker. you improve the crossover components, and you improve the mechanical structures that hold them all together, and you're going to make a better speaker, and nobody cares. We do. I'm sure everybody on this call probably cares, but clients don't. And so we ask ourselves, how can we sell better things to people without forcing on a technology conversation? And I think the simplest answer is stop talking about product and talk about people's homes. It's the only thing they care about, right? And so the process that we like to use here, the exercise we do in the studio, is I tell people, hey, tell me what you're working on. Oh, we're building our beautiful new home, and next thing you know, we've got a set of plans laid out on a table. And we say, great, we have good, we have better, and we have best speakers available to you. Honestly, I don't know the right one for you until you tell us how you're going to use the space. So let's go through and do this exercise. Let's together identify the highest priority areas of your home. Right? This is where you, your family, your friends are going to spend the most time. And let's put an A next to that room. And that's going to tell us we should probably do one of the better speakers, if not the best speaker that's available for that space. Okay, that makes sense to me. Okay, those rooms that are still important, but maybe not as important, let's put a B next to those rooms. And what we're going to agree is we could probably do a good or a better speaker for that space. And then those rooms you never go into, but you still want sound in there when your relatives, your family, right, whatever comes over, let's put a C, and let's agree that a good speaker is going to be fine for that space. Right. And now when we hand somebody that proposal and they're going to say, Mark, these are 1,000. These are, oh, right. You told me this was the A room, the high priority. That makes perfect sense. Let's go with that one. Now, from your perspective, if you ever want to learn the difference between the speakers, I'm going to teach you a little bit about how we do our model numbers, a little of the nomenclature. So the first two letters are going to be the series: VX, visual experience; IS, invisible series, and on and on and on from there. The next number is going to tell you the woofer size. So if it's a VX4, that's going to be a 4-inch speaker, a VX6, a 6-inch, and a VX8 is going to be an 8-inch speaker. The last number is going to tell you the quality level. So we do a 0, a 2, a 4, and a 6. And the 6 is going to be our flagship model in the SONANCE series. And so as we move up in the line, we know that if the number goes from a 2 to a 6, we're going 2 steps up as far as the quality. And when we get to that quality, what are we improving? The drivers, the crossover components, and the mechanical structures, and it's going to be a better sounding speaker. Now, if you were here in the studio with me, this is where we would break, and I would actually play all these for you. So what we do is we actually pick on ourselves a little bit. We start every demo on our old VP66, which was one away from our flagship in the SONANCE line. And from there, we actually go to the new VX62. So we take 2 steps down in quality, and everybody says, oh my goodness, that sounds so much better. Why? And then we kind of go through some of the technology that's built in the speaker. And then we end up going between the 66, or excuse me, the VX62 and the VX66. And so we have a lot of fun in here actually showing some of the old stuff versus some of the new stuff. There's another key thing that makes these speakers sound better. So we talked a little bit before about even balance coverage of sound. Now, what happens in a traditional ceiling mount speaker is you're going to take this and you're going to mount it into the ceiling. And what happens is you're going to get a beam of sound that comes out of that speaker. Now, if you think about it, high frequencies are much more directional. So if you put the speaker and a tweeter is in the ceiling, you're going to get about a 40-degree dispersion. It doesn't mean when I step off access or I'm outside of that beam, I don't hear the speaker. It just means the intelligibility drops on it. And so we've all noticed sometimes when you're under the speaker, then you're out of it, then you're under it as you're walking through a space, you tend to hear the intelligibility improves on it. So what we wanted to do is make that dispersion wider within the space. And so in the new SONANCE series, what we have is this very special thing called the sinusoidal waveguide. Never try to pronounce that, by the way. And so essentially what this waveguide is doing is it's taking that dispersion and it's increasing it from about 40 degrees all the way out to about 60 degrees. And so if you think about speakers in the ceiling now, that's actually going to spread through the room. So as far as we know, we're the only company really designing a ceiling speaker for the way people actually use it. right? We're not trying to convince more people to listen to music as a hobby. We're saying music is there to enhance any other experience that you're having in the space itself. And so by increasing that, what we're doing is we're making it more comfortable. And so people don't have to yell over the top of it. We don't have the volume wars there. So you've got those 4 performance models in the Sonance line, and then you've got those 3 different sizes available as well. Now, how does somebody choose between a 4-inch, 6-inch, and 8-inch? Well, the lights might tell me that, but we also know that the bigger the woofer, the more air we can move, and the more air we can move, the more bass we can create. So one of the things we talk about here is hidden bass solutions. If I want to keep the size of the speaker smaller, what we're going to talk about is how do we hide bass. So put that in the back of your brain, because we're going to talk about that when we get to invisible speakers here in just a second. The last thing I wanted to key on really quickly is going to be the installation of it. And so we went out and interviewed lots of our great partners out there, and we asked them, hey, what do you like and what don't you like currently about speakers that installs? And this is like asking people what their favorite food is. Everybody gives a different answer. Some people were saying we like a single piece system. Other people were saying, hey, we really like a 2-piece system. And we said, okay, let's give everybody what they want. And so when you open, starting with the VX62 and go up to the 66, you've got the option of installing this either as a single piece or as a dual piece. And so if you're a fan of the good old roto connectors and the locks on the side over here, take the speaker out of the box. You're going to hold it right by that center waveguide. You're going to stick it into the ceiling. But one thing we wanted to do is make it faster. I know this is probably not going to come through on the camera, but what you're going to notice is we've gone to a much coarser thread for the actual screw. So if you're doing this with a hand-turned screwdriver, it's about 2.5 turns. It is that quick. If people are going to do this with a drill, what we're going to say is put it on the lowest torque setting, and it's about 3/4 of a second pull on the trigger, and it's going to be installed. So that good old-fashioned dog ear is going to come out, and it's going to clamp it down onto the ceiling itself. But if you want to do this as a 2-piece system, what you're going to notice is these little connectors on the front of the speaker. And what we're going to do is we're going to take these and we're going to open them up completely. And when that happens, what I'm able to do is grab the speaker and actually take the speaker out of the frame. So now I've got the frame just in my hand over here. And what we're going to notice on the frame is there's a little blue piece right over here. And we're going to want to know about that because you're going to see this blue fin on the speaker. So there's only one way it's going to go in. So if I want to take my wire whip and attach it to these connectors on the back over here, and now push it up into the ceiling and install that, my hands are free. And at this point, I would grab the speaker. And then what we're going to do is put this into the install position. So I take the lever and I click it 1 turn. And this is now going to get it into what we call the install position. And once this is in the install position, I'll grab the center. I'll align those 2 blue pieces up with each other, and we will push it into the frame, and you'll hear it click. It is now installed. It is not completely locked in there. If we needed to take that out, we would back that lever out 1 position. But if now we want to install it completely and leave it, we're going to hit the lock position. And that speaker is now locked in there. Now, what we've seen from competitors is a lot of them go in really easy, but they don't come out very easy. And so with this one, if I needed to take this out for any reason, whether it's servicing or by accident, I put the good speaker where the better one was supposed to be, we're just going to take this and put this to the open position and take those levers, move them. And now what we're able to do is actually remove it out as well. So it comes out nice and easy. And now I'm back to having a 2-piece system over here. So lots of great improvements on that visual experience. I want to pause. Is there anything in the chat room that anybody might have questions on the visual experience?
I think I'm keeping up pretty good, Mark.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Appreciate you monitoring that for us. Now, there's some additional SKUs that are now available in this. So not only do we have our good, better, best in the 3 sizes, we're also taking some of the specialty products and we're making those available now with the new visual experience. And so those are going to be our LCR models and what we call single stereo models. And so single stereo models are of course, we know maybe I've got a powder room, maybe I've got a hallway, and I don't want to do a left and right in there. Now, here's the interesting thing. When you look at our new single stereo, my guess is everybody's used to 2 tweeters in a single stereo model. We're finding that this waveguide does such an incredible job of the dispersion. Is we tested 2 tweeters without a waveguide and then 1 tweeter with the waveguide, and this actually performed better. And so the single stereo models will definitely have dual voice coil, both on the tweeter and the mid bass driver. And then there'll be a left and a right input on the back of it as well. We're going to be expanding the visual experience series to also eventually include our thin line models over here as well. And then this technology works so well that we're migrating it into other Sonance products. And so when we talk about outdoor, and I know we're going to raffle off some of the new outdoor product, the Mariners. These have actually got all of this new VX technology, which includes upgraded crossovers, that waveguide, all of that good stuff over there. All right, so now we're going to ask somebody, great, that is one way we can improve not only the performance, but how it looks. Now we're going to say, well, what if you didn't want to see it at all? What could we do that way? And so if you think about one of our pillars is designed to disappear, and the exclamation point on designed to disappear would definitely be an invisible speaker. And so we're going to turn this over now and look at the invisible wall behind me over here. And so let me give everybody a quick little brief history lesson. Invisible speakers have been out for over 20 years. I worked on the custom integration side for many years, and honestly, I hated talking about invisible. And the reason I didn't like it is I knew we were giving up performance to get those better aesthetics out of there. And so Sonance did not make an invisible speaker. So we went out and actually we acquired the company that invented the technology about 20 years ago. But we were very realistic what they could and couldn't do. And so we set realistic expectations. We told people background music only, never turn these things loud. They have no bass whatsoever. So you're going to need a subwoofer with every single one, and never, ever try to do your TV or surround sound through it. Turns out that's not the most compelling way to talk about a very expensive speaker. And so we said, we have to get better. We have to be a better authentic partner. And so we approached our research and development team, and we gave them unlimited time and unlimited budget with the goal of, we need an invisible speaker that sounds as good as a traditional speaker with zero compromise. They came back to us a few years later and said, hey, we just made the best speaker we've ever made as a company. It just happens to be invisible. And we said, what does that mean? And they said, you can play them loud. They have a ton of bass, and you can actually do your TV sound through it. And on our old series, we were adamant about using our DSP amplifiers. I will still tell you our DSP amplifiers will get you out of trouble because they're able to change the sound of the speaker to match the acoustics of the room. But we're also fairly agnostic. If you guys want to do these off surround sound receivers, or dare I say even a Sonos amplifier, we have tested it. We've demoed it here in the studio, and you can actually do that with these guys. So you can have a lot of fun with the design of it. So let's break them down a little bit. The invisible speaker. This is the back of the speaker you're looking at over here. And this is the front of the speaker over here. And so if you look at the front of the speaker, it looks like a piece of drywall. Why? Because anything you can do with a traditional drywall finish, you can do to the invisible speaker. But here's the catch, and this is really important. I want everybody to understand this, is anything you put over the top of it has to be flexible. Okay, so let's understand what is and what isn't flexible. So if somebody's doing a traditional drywall, what they're ending up doing is a texture, a primer, or a paint. You are good to go in that scenario. There's another thing people talk about in drywall finishes, and it's called level 5 drywall. Level 5 drywall is when you put a skim coat across the entire surface to achieve a very, very smooth look to it. And we say, go for it. It just has to be 1 to 3 millimeters of topping compound without compromising the performance. Now, on our old series, we just had to take people's word for it. And so somebody would come back and say, hey, why do my speakers sound like this? And we would say, how much topping compound did you put on there? And they would say, oh, it's definitely less than 3. And then when you yank the thing out, it had a half inch of mud over the top of it. So there is a way now to verify exactly how much topping compound is on there. In the corners of each of the speakers, what we're going to do is put a little steel disc. And then part of the invisible kit, and by the way, there is a certification process that Brian is going to be implementing to get you approved. So once you go through the certification course, you're able to sell and talk about invisible speakers. Brian can follow up with everybody on that. But this is actually a tool that we sell. It's called the SONANCE DG1 or depth gauge. And the way the depth gauge, well, let me actually tell you what this is. This is a repurposed tool from the classic automotive industry. When they go to sell a classic car, they want to make sure it's the original paint. And so what they do is they actually measure the depth of the paint. So if it's supposed to be 0.5 millimeter and they go around and they find 3 millimeters, they know that dent was repaired. And so we said, hey, that's a really cool tool. Let's repurpose that for the invisible speaker. And so what happens is if somebody is doing a skim coat across the entire surface of a ceiling or wall, you're going to go out there with a test tone generator. You're going to feed it signal, and then you're going to take this piece. It looks like, anybody ever play Sorry as a kid? It looks like a Sorry piece, right? It's actually a magnet. What it's going to do is we're going to drag it across, and we're going to get to the edge of the speaker, and it's going to find exactly where that steel disc is. And then what we're going to do is we're going to remove that, and we're going to put this piece over the top of it, and it's going to measure in millimeters exactly what the depth of the topping compound is. And so what we tell people is we want to do that before final coat. Final coat would be a paint coat on there. And so if it's within tolerance, we sign off on the project and we're good to go. If it happens to be more than 3 millimeters, we're just going to say, hey, break out your sander. I'll stand right here, get a whole bunch of drywall dust all over me. But we're going to wait until you get that down below that 3 millimeters. We're going to sign off on the project. And then we're going to say you can go with your paint coat over the top of it. So what are some other materials we can put over the top? Is we said anything flexible. I know I'm getting a bad glare here, so I'm going to try to go from the side. What we also talk about here is plaster. And so let's make sure we understand what we can and can't do with plaster. So a traditional Venetian plaster is going to be a mineral or a stone base. That is a big no. That is a no because it's not flexible. It will crack and will hurt the performance of the speaker. The good news, we're seeing the plaster industry gravitate towards synthetic materials, specifically towards acrylic as the primary bonding agent in that plaster. The good news, it's a little less expensive and it's easier to apply, but you can achieve the same look. So if somebody says plaster, we're going to say go for it. It just needs to be an acrylic-based plaster. So a little bit more project management is going to be required here. That's going to be true of really the installation of invisible. It's not hard. It just requires some extra project management. Okay, other things we can do is we can do wallpaper. We can do paperback wood veneers. I want to say that word again. This is a paperback wood veneer. A traditional wood veneer is going to be anywhere from 1/2 inch to 3/4, or maybe 1/4 inch, whatever it is. A paperback wood veneer is going to be anywhere from 0.5 millimeter to about 3/4 millimeter thick. So if somebody wants to achieve that wood look, they can do that. Not very commonly used in the residential market, but in the marine market is leather. And so if somebody wants to do leather, we have tested it and you can absolutely do that. If you run across a question, hey, will this material work? Reach out to us, either myself, Brian, any of the SONANCE team, and we're going to connect you with one of our team and member engineers who's going to say, yes, we've seen that material before, we've tested it and it works, or no, it does not work. And so let's work with each other as partners to make sure that we're going to have success rate with the installation of these. So I told you before, what we have is 3 basic models. we're going to have a small, a medium, and a large. An IS6, IS8, and IS10. The difference between them is the woofer size, how loud it's going to play, and how much bass it's going to reproduce. And so somebody's going to say, great, what's the right one for me? And my answer is always the same. I have no idea. Let's talk about how you're going to use the space, and let's come up with the best solution. Okay, this is going to be for a powder room, a hallway, a back bedroom, and I'm going to say, do the smalls, do the IS6s. You'll be just fine. Okay, I've got an open concept room. It's an 8-foot ceiling, and we're moderate volume listeners. I'm going to say, man, the mediums will probably do a great job for you. Then somebody might say, hey, we've got taller ceilings, and/or sometimes I want a dance party. When I hear dance party, I think, okay, they're going to play it loud and they're going to want some more bass out of it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to steer somebody over to the IS10s or the big one there. Now, I don't care if it's the small guy, the big guy, an inexpensive, high performance speaker. To get bass out of any speaker, what you're forced to do is turn the volume up. And so what we're big fans is running additional subwoofers, because what you can do is keep the volume here nice and comfortable, but you can raise the subwoofer volume up a little bit. So even at low volumes, I get that warmth, that richness to the bottom end. And so let's talk about hidden bass solutions now. We have what we call the VP subwoofer, which would be a very traditional 10-inch woofer that would go on the wall with a grill over the top of that. But what if somebody says, I don't want to see it? So what we're going to talk about now is we have a 10-inch woofer, subwoofer, that we have in the Invisible series. We have a 15-inch subwoofer, and I got to tell you, that thing rocks. The only objection we ever got to that guy was, hey, Mark, that's huge. That's going to occupy 2 stud bays. We got to frame out. And so we recently introduced something we call the IS-10-2W. It's going to displace the same amount of air as we have on the 15, but we're going to do it with dual 10-inch woofers. This is nice because it's a single stud bay, so it's going to fit within a standard 16 on center stud bay there. There's lots of other things to talk about with Invisible when it comes to installation. It's hard to see here, but take my word for it. It's an open back design, which means a lot of air and a lot of sound is going to go behind the speaker as much as downward firing as well. And so we make additional skews to help mitigate the transfer of sound. So what you're looking at now over my shoulder are going to be back boxes. The idea of the back box is not to help the sound, and it's not to hurt the sound. It's to help mitigate the transfer of sound and also protect the speaker. If it happens to be in an area where they're going to do insulation, either a foam or a blow-in, whatever it happens to be, I would say go ahead and put the back boxes on there as well. If you're putting this between stories, the first floor and the second floor, and there's a bedroom up above the main living area, we're definitely want to do back boxes there. So we have a traditional back box that's going to fit within a 16 on center, whether that's a joist in the ceiling or a stud in the wall. But some of the joists we work on these projects are thinner. And so we make a thinner version of it with a little bit more depth to it. And so that's available as well. This is part of a pre-installation kit. So you have a couple ways to do this. You can do it with a traditional space saver. I say the better way to do it is this new SKU that we have, and it's a reusable piece of MDF. And what's going to happen is we're going to attach that to the back box like we see here. We're going to pre-install that to the joist or into the studs. We're going to screw it all in there, and then we're going to attach this back box to either the joist or the studs. And then we're just going to tell the drywaller, hey, just board around the outside of this. And then once you do that, before we start mudding and taping of drywall seams, we're going to keep the back box in there, just remove this outer piece. We're going to recycle it, and then we're going to install the speaker. And what we're left with is we're left with a drywall seam. And again, I know this is going to be hard to see on here, but in the design gallery, you'll have to take my word for it. This is a piece of drywall up against a Invisible speaker. And when two pieces of drywall come together, what we're left with is a drywall seam. How do we get rid of those? We mud and tape. So we're going to take a layer of mud, put tape over the top of that, let it cure, put another layer of mud, we're going to sand, and then we're going to finish it with whatever we're going to do, finished material over here. So as I said before, it's not hard to install an invisible speaker. We also have installation videos both on our website and our YouTube channel. We have those videos also in Spanish. So if you're on a project and the drywaller doesn't speak English as his primary language, you can play that video. It's about 8 minutes long, and will save you a lot of headaches. So if anybody here hasn't watched it before, I would highly advise watching the installation video. There's two of them, one for the actual speaker and then one to use the depth gauge on there as well.
So we got 5 minutes here, Mark. Want to let's give away some speakers right now.
I love it. Let's do it.
Got a question for everybody. First one that answers will win a pair of Mariners. The wall measuring tool that Mark mentioned, what is that called? That's the question.
Ooh, can I play?
You can't. You have enough speakers. You have enough speakers there. Yeah. You answer that question. Whoever answers first will win the pair of Mariners. Let me see, and then we'll go to the polls. Looks like you guys are all answering the polls. Really appreciate it. Most of you out there have not used the Sonance Design Gallery. Looks like it's about 64%. So hopefully, after Mark kind of went over the Design Gallery tool, that you guys will start implementing that for your future applications. And have you installed the new Sonance VX architectural speakers? Looks like over half of you have already. So hopefully we'll see more of those come as time goes. And thank you so much for going over the invisibles. I think it's going to be great for all of us. Anything else that we want to cover with? Or said we have a few more minutes.
Yeah, there's two quick things. One is we didn't touch on outdoor. I know you guys had a limited range of what you can sell from us initially. You now have access to our complete outdoor category. Listen, I just want to tell you this. It's the same conversation, right? People spend so much on their backyards these days and outdoor. It's just an extension of the indoor space. And we just want people to be comfortable out there. So take a few minutes and go through that as well. Probably one of the most exciting things to talk about is what we showed at CEDIA. Is there's a new series from Sonance called the Small Aperture. And so what is small aperture? Well, the idea is I want to get as much sound as I can from a smallish opening. And so what we're going to talk about is the new Sonance SA466. So it's small aperture, and it's going to be a 4-inch opening. It's going to be a 6.5-inch woofer, but it's going to give a 6 series performance, which is the flagship performance in the Sonance line. It's one of these magical things. You never expect that much sound out of a 4-inch opening. And the reason we're able to do that is it's actually a fairly large box that's going to sit and get pre-installed in between the joist itself, and that's where the woofer is. When you mount the tweeter mid module inside of it, what you have is basically a gap of air, and that's where the bass is going to leak through. And we're going to make that available with a traditional bezel and then also a trimless bezel on there as well. So there'll be 2 ways. We showed it and played it for everybody at CEDIA. We had a lot of mouths on the floor at CEDIA, like, I don't understand how you're able to get that much sound out of that small opening. And the good news is we're looking for end of first quarter as far as when we're going to be shipping the new small aperture. So Brian and his team are probably going to make appointments once we get a little further on the production road of that and bring those around so everybody can see them and hear them.
Fantastic. Dano and Nelson, thank you so much. You guys answered the question, so we'll get you a pair of Mariners. This has been fantastic. I really want to maybe continue with the tour with you. Maybe we can reschedule that again to see everything up there at the studio.
Is there anybody who just want a quick peek, like 2 minutes of me walking around the studio, or are we out of time?
Yeah, just walk. Yeah, if you can, let's see if it works.
All right, let's do it. All right, we're going to lose my video for just a second. I promise it's going to kick back on as well. Let's do that.
Yep.
All right, here you go. Sorry, you're going to get a little dizzy following me around here just a second. So I told you what we were there is in the music room. This happens to be the rest of the studio over here. So this is the Sonance studio in beautiful San Clemente, California. This is going to be part of our team members. Say hi, Aaron and Courtney. There you go. That's the kitchen area over there. This is where we usually start the tour, which is the mezzanine. We also have an invisible living room that we take people in, so a complete invisible room that we're able to demonstrate. Yep, it is a 5.2.4 both wall and ceiling system we do for there. And this old out of shape guy is going to lose his breath going up the stairs here. But a couple other fun spaces I want to show you really quick. So we generally start most of our meetings on what we call the mezzanine over here. And so the way we've laid the mezzanine out is we have our pillars wall, and then we have our wall where we show off residential products. Sonance is also big in the commercial world. So this is a wall where we show off all the commercial series product. And then probably the most exciting new space that I'm going to bring you into really quick. Told you I was going to run out of breath as I'm running around.
You're doing a good job.
This happens to be our new great room. And so this room is very, very cool. It's a GE Monogram Design Center. It's also a lighting design center as well. So, and then this happens to be the front of the wall over here. And so in this room, we introduce lots of different things. So we talk about design, we talk about temperature, we talk about lighting, and we talk about how music can actually change the way a room feels. So hopefully we planted a seed for you guys to say, come out to San Clemente. It's a really fun place. You can either bring your clients here, your trade partners here, or come together as a team. And what we do is break all these things down in a very informal way and make it fun while you're here.
It's awesome. Thank you, Mark, so much. You can catch your breath now. Thank you so much for the tour of the Sonance studio, showing us all the new VX invisible speakers. I really appreciate your time. Yeah, I'd like to come out there myself. So maybe we have over 130 people on this call. Maybe we all come out there sometime.
Love it. Love it. Open invitation, Mark.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you so much. And we will see everybody on the next training. Thanks again, Mark and Brian.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.